Strategist and former White House political director for President George W. Bush, Matt Schlapp. Thank you both for joining us.
Great to be here.
Okay, so Roger, let's start off with you. And I want to start off with not this town hall, which there was a lot of news there, but Bernie Sanders and this momentum that he's received there. I was talking with a Hillary Clinton supporter this morning, and he almost just stammered, was nearly speechless when I said, what about Bernie Sanders at this point? Because of this crowd and an undeniable feeling now that Bernie Sanders is not just a one-off.
Reporters are usually trained to minimize or ignore crowd size because crowds can be bought. You pay people, you put them on a bus, you take them to the site. But Bernie Sanders doesn't have the money to buy crowds. So there is the feeling that Bernie Sanders crowds are for real and they are important. And he is attracting very large numbers of people. His campaign is smart enough to get those people's names and internet addresses before they leave. And he gives a pretty good speech. People go away from those speeches energized.
And let me ask you, to your point, people can buy crowds, and some think that polls these days are up for grabs, but I believe the NBC News Wall Street Journal is legit. And here you have Sanders leading Clinton by 9 points in New Hampshire. When Vice President Joe Biden is included as an option in that poll, Sanders' lead jumps to 14 points. In Iowa, Hillary Clinton leads Sanders by 11 points, but when Vice President Joe Biden is included, her lead over Sanders in Iowa falls to 5 points, Roger.
I believe it was written long ago that if Hillary Clinton loses Iowa and New Hampshire, both, she is in very serious trouble. And in fact, if she just loses one of them, she's in a certain amount of trouble. Bernie Sanders is doing too well from her campaign's point of view. And if the vice president gets in this race, everything gets reshuffled. We start at zero. We look at those first polls, and we're going to see what happens.
Matt, let me bring you in. A lot of what we've seen as far as the slip for Hillary Clinton has to do with what people see as a credibility problem. Some of that with this email server situation and questions still about Benghazi. With that said, we know what happened with Kevin McCarthy and his admission that the hearing was in part to knock her down in the polls. This morning on the town hall on the Today Show, she had another opportunity to really hit Republicans hard on this. Let's play it.
This committee was set up, as they have admitted, for the purpose of making a partisan political issue out of the deaths of 4 Americans. I would have never done that. And if I were president and there were Republicans or Democrats who were thinking about that, I would have done everything to shut it down.
That was fire. I mean, that was true passion. And if the Bernie Sanders, anger, the Donald Trump anger is what attracts people, the Hillary Clinton anger seen there seemed authentic and would definitely motivate those independent voters who are on the fence about her, Matt.
Well, look, she's exploiting this opportunity by this misstatement from Kevin McCarthy, and she's smart to go out there aggressively. But she doesn't really have a Republican problem, Cameron. She has a big old Democratic problem. She has the Vice President of the United States leaning very hard into getting into this race, and there's a lot of rumors out there that he's actually going to get into the race. Democrats have lost confidence in her as their front runner, so it's not really a Republican problem she's facing. Look at Bernie Sanders. Roger says he doesn't have the money to buy these crowds. Well, actually, he does. He actually raised a comparable amount of money to Hillary Clinton in this last quarter. Everything out there is turning against her. Now, what she needs to do is do exactly what she's doing. Talk about issues that the base of her party cares about, and go out there and give it all she's got and show people who she is. She needs to stop hiding behind these roads. She needs to get out there and mix it up.
Well, I think we saw her do that with this town hall. She's got 2 in New Hampshire. She was on SNL. With that said, you say she doesn't have a Republican problem, but she could have a Republican solution if members of your party continue to follow the way of Kevin McCarthy and, as we now know, speak at least his version of the truth and one that was music to her ears.
Tamron, that is just wrong. If you look at the polls, it's independents, it's Democrats, and yes, it's Republicans. She has a huge credibility problem. People don't think she's trustworthy. People don't think she's ready to take the next step. She can solve the problem herself, but it's not Republicans she has a problem with. It's her own stupid campaign that's being poorly run and a candidate that's had a weak performance.
But going back to McCarthy's statement, he said if we could bring up this committee, it would ding her in the polls. He wasn't referring to Republican voters there because we know that people are engaged on both sides, and credibility problem, let me finish, a credibility problem can exist as a result of questions that have been repeatedly brought up by Republican lawmakers.
But if you look, okay, so if you look at Benghazi, I don't think there are Democrats out there that are upset. Let me just say it this way. The Democrats out there are not going to fall into some kind of Republican plan to hurt Hillary Clinton. If you look at these numbers and look at the polls, she has a credibility problem with Democrats and independents. Yes, of course she has a problem with Republicans, but she has a problem with her own people that are going to be voting in these primaries. She has a problem with the Vice President of the United States who wants to run against her. She needs to focus on that problem. And yes, Republicans are a great foil and she should use them, but that's not really what her problem is now.
Oh, speaking of Republicans, turning now to that side of the race, Donald Trump's lead in the key early states of Iowa and New Hampshire is shrinking. That according to the same poll we're talking about, the NBC News Wall Street Journal Marist poll. Ben Carson has cut Trump's lead in Iowa down to just 5 points. And in New Hampshire, Trump is down 7 points since last month, while Carly Fiorina is up 10. On Meet the Press yesterday, Donald Trump said he'll quit the race if he's falling far behind other candidates in those numbers.
You know, how many elections do you see where the polls were wrong? Not that many. Okay, you see them, but not that many. If I were doing poorly, if I saw myself going down, if you would stop calling me because you no longer have any interest in Trump because he has no chance, I'd go back to my business. I have no problem with that.
So, Matt, as Chuck Todd pointed out on Meet the Press, Donald Trump may be slipping, but he's still in the lead, and it's the second and third spots where we're seeing the fluctuation.
You know, Tamron, it's why he's such an interesting candidate, those answers he just gave. He's talking about maybe exiting the race if his polls aren't doing well. You know, if he had a bunch of advisors, they'd all be pulling their hair out because you never want to say something like that. But he just says it like he feels. I think he feels like if he was doing poorly in the polls, really poorly, he probably would just get out. And the fact is, he's about in the same range he's been at since he's gotten into this race. He probably can't get much higher, but he doesn't seem to be dropping, and most of the political prognosticators are completely confused by that.
Well, someone that's considered an outsider that the establishment likes, Carly Fiorina, is having trouble of her own this morning. The Washington Post is saying that in her Senate bid in 2010, she did not pay some of her staffers. The report says that more than 30 invoices totaling about $500,000 that the multimillionaire did not settle, even as Fiorina reimbursed herself nearly $1.3 million she lent the campaign. She finally cleared most of the balance in January, but that was a few months, Matt, before announcing her run for president. I think a lot of people will also think about her time as a CEO when people were losing their jobs, but as been reported, she was acquiring a new boat, new house, et cetera, Roger.
Well, what Matt was talking about a few seconds ago was the things that Hillary lacks. The things that Hillary has is the Republican field. That's her big benefit. That's her big boost. Look at the top three people in the Republican field: Trump, Carson, Fiorina. Tell me seriously, which one of those people is going to win the presidency? Which one of those people can you imagine sitting behind the desk in the Oval Office with their hands on the nuclear button, taking care of the complex issues which faces the United States? It is the Republican field is unsettled. They are attacking one another. There's the real question on whether if one of those top three actually manages to get the nomination, that the party will coalesce behind them.
They will.
Even if it's Donald Trump, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think, Roger, no offense, but I mean, this is exactly, people like you and me are exactly the people out in the country, Republicans who are going to vote in these primaries. That's who they're tired of hearing from on these things. They actually want to try someone new. They actually think Hillary Clinton's been around maybe a little too long. They want to try someone new. So I think that's the spirit of what's going on. And as far as Carly Fiorina is concerned, she paid all these bills. It's a done deal. And I don't know why the Washington Post is bringing it back up. It's all paid.
But to your point about wanting someone new, is that why we're still seeing this lag with Jeb Bush, Matt?
I mean, there's no question. If Jeb Bush is to capture the spirit of what's going on the Republican side, he has to talk about his Washington as an elected official. That accrues to his benefit in this field, and that's what he has to focus on.
And going back quickly to this Carly Fiorina report, as someone who's establishing an identity with voters, she is moving up in the polls, but as we very well know, she has a lot of introduction that still needs to be done. And when you have a major headline in the Washington Post, again, no one believes they lean left. She went without paying these bills, Matt. Just in January, this balance was clear. That was a few months before announcing her run for president. And according to the Post, she paid herself nearly $1.3 million. And you shrug that off?
No, I don't shrug it off. I'm just letting you know that she left that campaign putting millions of her personal resources into it, so she didn't fully get paid back either. And she paid everybody she owed a bill to, and so it's resolved. So your question is, should she have paid it sooner? Well, you should bring it up with her, but I don't think
we would love to bring it up, but I'm asking, as we discuss the credibility problem with one candidate, here is someone that doesn't have a huge name ID.
Look, Hillary Clinton stole furniture from the White House when she left the White House. You want to start talking about people have done... She actually did that. She had to return it.
This is what the Republicans have to run on, stolen furniture. That's what
she took it. She had to return it.
Okay, we're done, but I'm sure that you will look back at what you just said, and you're going to think to yourself, why did
Cameron,
you go there?
look it up. Go look it up.
We're having a legitimate conversation about a news report that you could simply respond to. But we're going to have you back on.
And it was in the Washington Post that she took stuff from the White House.
I've got to move on to the breaking news that we're reporting out of.